Happy New Year.
Happy first Monday of 2021, everyone. I'm Kim Spillers.
And I'm Frank Spillers. And what is normal? What do you consider normal? And should rural America think about going back and wishing we could all get back to normal? We're going to be talking about that today on Rural Community Solutions TV live stream. So come on back and we'll be right here. Picture, if you will, the pure, raw prairie. No wires, no fences, no roads, not even a farmhouse. No sign of civilization. This is what a person saw that was crossing the prairie in a wagon more than 170 years ago. They jumped off the wagon, looked around, and declared, "This is where I want to settle and build a town. A great place to live and a great place to raise my family." So they took a risk. They built a house made out of the land, planted food to eat, and cared for the land. Then they wrote back to their friends where they came from and described the great opportunity and promise that they have found. They invited who they knew to join them in their discovery, people they had a relationship with, and so they came, family by family, and those families invited others they knew who they wanted to live with within that community. The communities grew because the needs of the families grew, so entrepreneurs started businesses to meet those community needs. Ice houses, broom factories, general stores, and many other types of sole proprietor entrepreneurial businesses started up within the community. All of our communities across this country, all around the world, were started in this way, with a vision of the future and a plan to grow with people. So what's your plan to grow with people in the year 2021?
We are so grateful that you have joined us this morning. You could be a lot of places, or you could be listening to a lot of podcasts, but we are really thankful that you have decided to join us. We have an exciting week of shows that we have prepared for you. We're going to talk about normal and whether or not that is what we really want to do. And if it isn't what we want to do, what do we want to do? So that's going to be the focus of our first week in January of 2021.
So what's normal?
People talk about getting rid of 2020. I just want to get back to normal. So we thought that that's an important thing. A woman on the news last night was dissolved to tears. She wanted life to be back to what she felt normal. And so we're going to talk through what that means and what maybe people really do intend when they say normal.
So here's the definition that we found from Webster's. What is a true definition of normal? Regular, normal, typical, natural, meaning being a sort of kind that is expected as usual. So normal is usual expectations. You can expect something to happen. Ordinary, average, regular stresses conformity to a rule, standard, or pattern. It's really what do you expect? It's you being able to expect something. And in 2020, because of the pandemic, we have not been able to expect. We didn't know what the expectations. We didn't know what the positivity rate is going to be for tomorrow. We didn't know what our leadership was going to do, whether they were going to require masks or not require masks, whether they were going to hold events, whether infection rates were going to spread, whether hospital rates were going to go up, whether people were going to get better, whether people were going to die. We didn't know what was going on. So normal is more of a lack of deviation from what has been discovered or established as the most usual or expected. So the bottom line is this: normal is comfortable. Normal is your comfort zone. That is what normal is. Now, that's fine, but it doesn't allow for growth. If normal is your comfort zone and growth is out of your comfort zone, then growth will not happen. And so what does that mean for rural America? Well, let's look at what normal has created in rural America. Here's general characteristics of rural America. A small population in size, generally lower or low population density. In other words, there's few people per square mile. Okay, so the urban centers you have greater number of people per square mile. In the rural areas, we can spread out and have fewer people per square mile. Now that's a good thing. It's a bad thing, you know. And at the beginning of the pandemic, some of our leadership in our rural states were saying that that COVID wouldn't be as intense in our state because of the ruralness that we have. We don't have people close together. Well, that didn't pan out so well. So what else are characteristics of rural areas? Rural areas, there's a smaller choice when it comes to shopping, medical services, etc. Now, that's not good. That's not a great characteristic when you have smaller choices. It's not a great characteristic when you have hospitals that are closing because of lack of money, lack of available resources. And then you start to have people that don't have access to, say, maternity, obstetrics doctors. You don't have people that have access to
specialists. We often have specialists who come in, at least here in our county, and I think that is dominant across rural America. We have people who, specialists, who will come in like once a week or a couple times a month. So it's not that access isn't there, but there are fewer choices that take place on a more regular basis. So that has been a characteristic of rural America for the last umpteen decades. We tend to have a lower cost of living. So that's a plus. Lower cost of living from metropolitan areas. We have much better property values for the amount of land and the size of houses and things like that. So that's a real benefit. We do, on the other hand, tend to have lower wages and perhaps more poverty in rural areas. We do have lots of nature. We have lots of natural resources. We have farming and we have ranch land. And we do tend to have an aging population. People who have been in rural America all their lives, they tend to want to stay there until it's time for them to go on.
Okay, there she is. She went through the whole list. And so let me go back with that lower cost of living. That's a really a plus if you are looking to move from a major metropolitan area to rural America. Because if you own a house, if you own a 1,200 square foot on slab house in, say, Southern California, that you have paid about $480,000 for. Okay, so less than 1,200 square feet, 3-bedroom on a slab, and you look at that, and you're ready to get out of the hustle bustle. You're ready to get out of what is out there. And maybe that's normal for you, and that's your comfort zone, and that is okay. That is fine. But if you come into and say you want to move to where we are in Southwest Iowa, we live on just a hair under an acre of property, right in the middle of town, under an acre of property. We live in about a 2,400 square foot house, 2-story. It's got
4 bedrooms.
4 bedrooms.
We have 4 bedrooms. Yeah.
I had to count. We're in one of them, by the way. Yeah, I had to count. Okay, but our house is assessed. Now, this doesn't mean it's valued at, but it's assessed for right around $50,000, right in that area, okay? And so you have a lower cost of living. Now, let's take that on the other side of resale value, okay? But if you are investing in yourself and moving into this, you can reinvest the difference in housing costs into a growth market, into something. And maybe you're an entrepreneur. Maybe you would love to start that business, and this would give you the operating capital and the cash flow that you could do.
Or you could take that money and you could invest in it in your retirement. So looking from moving from metro areas around the world into rural America is a really wise decision to consider because of the opportunities that are here. Are there some trade-offs? Yeah, there are some trade-offs, but we have access. We're within distance of the things that most people need, and especially if things are done online.
So let's go to Charles Kettering, my favorite. All right, Charles Kettering, that said this quote: "I am interested in the future because that is where I am going to spend the rest of my life." Where are you going to spend the rest of your life? It's not going to be today. It's going to be in the future. It's going to be from here on out. This is where your life is going to be spent from this moment forward. How are you going to plan that? What is your community going to do to capitalize upon these themes? Now, here's some of those themes. You have a small population size. What are opportunities with the small population size? Some families like that. Let's take, for example, a small population size for a school system. There's lots of opportunities for a student, if you're a student athlete, to cross-pollinate, if you will, into many, many different sports. You don't have to specialize into one sport. You can round out your abilities into more types of sports. However, on the other side of that, small population in a school district means small funding. You're not gaining the funding possibilities that you could have with larger districts because of per pupil costs or per pupil funding mechanisms that you get. Small population also might indicate that your school is going to merge or consolidate. However, that's not necessarily bad either, because then you're taking a regional approach. You are taking advantage of the region and not just sitting in a silo. So you are spreading out. You're looking at opportunities across the board. You're looking at opportunities for more teachers. You're looking at opportunities for more skill. You're looking at the opportunities of how we can best serve a region, which we have to learn how to do. Serve a region than just a small silo of where your student population is coming from. Let me take, for example, also that very bottom point, an aging population. Now, that can be a benefit. That can be a theme. However, we are finding in rural America that it is an aging population. Farmers are aging out. That average age of farmer is increasing. And what that tells us is that the cost of farming, the entry-level cost of farming, is extremely high. We're not allowing, and we don't have the opportunity for young farmers to start unless they are given the opportunity by their family, or there is some inheritance in there, or they have worked into that as a farmhand or something like that by the farmer, and there is a transition. There is a what's
Succession?
the word? Succession plan going on. Thank you. Succession plan that's going on between the generations. The cost of farming, if somebody just wanted to come in and say, I want to be a farmer, the cost of land is high, the cost of equipment is high. Depends on what type of farmer you want to be. But that's another issue for another show that we will go with, that we could go into. But the aging population of rural America is, on the average, is starting to grow because we are not attracting families. We are not attracting that youth generation to rural America. So how do we change that, and what are the benefits? But the benefits of an aging population, though, is that that grandchildren can move towards their grandparents. However, what we're finding in a trend of what is normal is that trend is that the grandparents are moving to where the grandchildren are. And so that is a movement out, an out migration. So some of these trends are starting to be shaken up since about 2016. We're starting to see some really early trends of the out migration starting to turn around in some of our counties. Now, some of those counties are in relation and close proximity to a metro county, because the metro areas are growing out to those counties. So some of those counties are losing their rural population because of the metro area growth. And so they are becoming more connected with the metro area. But in traditional and strictly rural areas that don't have a metro influence, there is that population decline trend in the county that we have lived in our county, and it's completely rural. We have not had a population growth for more than 100 years. Okay, and we are in connection basically to a metro county, and it only takes me 50 minutes to get to a metro airport, that I can get to any place in the world from that airport in 50 minutes. So that, to me, is a selling point to where I live.
Another thing that would be useful historically, and why Rural Community Solutions and E2 Entrepreneurial Ecosystems encourages communities to look 25 years down the road, is that the aging population and the farm succession that Frank was just mentioning. We can directly line that back to the 1980s. And for those of you who are old enough, there was a farming crisis. Interest rates were at 18 and 20% or more. Farm land was really expensive. Equipment costs, all of those things encouraged parents and grandparents at that time to tell their kids who were in high school, there's no future in farming for you here. Go off, go to college, go to the city, go find yourself a job. Don't bother with farming. Our kids listened. And this is what we're finding ourselves 40 years later, is that now we have an aging farming population. We've told those kids to go off. They've gone and gotten that education. They're going, well, I can't find a job back in my hometown for the education that I received. So sorry, mom and dad, or grandma and grandpa, I can't come back and farm because I did what you told me to. And so this is why we encourage communities to look at the decisions that we make today and how those decisions will affect children, because it matters to our next generation and the succeeding generation in what our community vitality looks like and all about, and how our health is literally and figuratively taken away by some of the choices that were made by people with really good intentions. Our families were trying to protect our kids, and that's what we do. But this is what we're living with now because of the decisions that were made then.
So it didn't just happen in farming families either. Right. I mean, you were sitting at your dining room table talking to your kids going, what's your future? What do you have a future in this community? And the parents would say, you need to leave. You need to go find a job someplace else. You need to go on to college and then find a good job, because there are no good jobs back here. And when we talk to students that might have moved away from their community, when we do our work, or that we talk to their parents, I'd love to get my kids to move back here, but there are no good jobs. So when a community then starts focusing on what is a good job, one, you have to define what that good job means. What is a good job? That's such a perception issue that it's hard to define as a community. However, there is opportunity. A community has to start talking about, we create opportunities for our youth to move back. That opportunity is dependent upon what that youth is passionate about, what they're interested in. But your community, does it set the environment to allow people to move back? Does your community set the environment, create that environment that attracts a person to move back? And so that begins with the experience that they had growing up in that community. Do you allow good experiences for your youth? Do you allow great memories? A lot of rural America, specifically the aging population, have a great memory and great experience of where they grew up in the town that they still live in. And so as we look at that population that has a great memory, I mean, we talk to people, the older population in the community, we talk to them, and they tell us how Main Street was packed on Saturday night. Everybody came down to Main Street on Saturday night. If you're listening to this podcast or you're watching this video and you are of that crowd and you are more experienced than maybe somebody else in your community, and
might be a little older and you have those memories or you know people. Just say it.
So you know what I'm talking about, because you could go down to Main Street and on Saturday night and your parents would take you there and everybody would be there. We have access, we have transportation modes these days that are extremely different than what that was in normal. So that was normal. That was your normal activity on a Saturday night, was to go downtown and park there and see your neighbors, because you came from the country, you grew up in the country, you didn't have really that social network possibility during the week because everybody was working, going to school. But on Saturday night, you came in and you participated with your neighbors and you got together. It's different these days. We have to figure out what is different, what are our themes, what are our opportunities in your community. And community by community, county by county, that's going to be different across the United States, what your opportunities are. So we have to look at what is your regional opportunities, what are your regional themes, what type of person is living in your community, and then determine what type of person do you want to live in your community. Once you do those two things, then you know what type of environment, what type of steps to take that will attract the people and the characteristics that you want. So tomorrow we're going to be talking about generalization, a generalized population that lives in a small rural community that we have been working with. What does that community look like? What are the general characteristics of that population? What do those people do? Where do they buy? What do they buy? How do they live? How do they act? What kind of characteristics do they have? What kind of jobs do they have? What kind of outlook do they have? Those characteristics are available for you and your community if you just pay attention. Right? And so that is your first step. Who lives in your community? We're going to be talking about what are some of those characteristics of those people that live in your community tomorrow. We call it a tapestry. The tapestry and the interwovenness of your community. These tapestries make up the quilt across your community.
So what the tapestries are going to reveal is what's normal in your communities. Who is the comfortable person who lives there? So it's really quite interesting. So that's going to be fascinating all on its own to share it. But as you look at whether you want to get back to normal in 2021, look at these general characteristics again that we have described. A small population size, is that what you want for your community? If it is, that's great. If you want to have a bigger population, what is taking place in the area to make it grow?
Well, if you want to have population, you have to be different, because
that's true.
A small population doing nothing to create that small population, you're going to lose the population. Yeah. Note, if you're not growing, you are in decline. There's nothing that you can do about that. So you have to move forward to keep your population either as it stands or growing.
Mm-hmm. Because you're right. Because if you don't do something to grow, eventually your community will disappear. That's the way numbers work. So, but it's a great opportunity. So that's why we want to flip. Your normal isn't what you want to go back to. You want to make a new normal so that you're going to go forward and do things differently. The choices that we have when it comes to shopping and medical services. Systems and organizations and hospitals, for example, since that's on a lot of people's minds, are working on those kinds of things. So we're making cooperative agreements. So it's not that you're moving to a desolate place. It's just that things are being done differently than they used to be. Systems and organizations are creating new normals.
And when it comes to shopping, your community can take different steps to create a different shopping atmosphere in your community that your community can capitalize upon. There's lots of opportunities, technology, different ways of people that are shopping, doing things, bringing that in there, that you will attract the shopper to your community.
Entrepreneurship and small business are getting lots and lots of press during the pandemic. And these are great opportunities, not just for people to come back to a community and start a new business, but for your students who are already there. Ask them what kind of businesses they want. Try to connect dots between people who are going to retire in your community and whether or not there's interest with the students who are already living there. Hey, have you thought about, I can make a big old list of things that communities need for different kinds of services. Let's help connect those dots with the kids who are already there and who want to stay and raise their families in their local communities. Lower wages and more poverty, that's a reality. So those are things that we need to work on through different economic infrastructures and adaptations and development and intentions for living wages and how to address poverty.
So instead of focusing on the lower wages and more poverty, it's how can you increase wealth in your community, okay? And if you increase wealth, then the wages increase, the poverty decreases. It's increasing wealth as we look across the whole economy. And so then you have lots of nature, natural resources. Those are themes that you can build upon. Trail systems, bike systems, lakes, walking trails, and that's great for rural America. And rural America has done a great job on doing that. And the aging population, how do we help the aging population? Here's the rub between that is that, yes, we want to become a retirement community, but in rural America, did you know that Medicare and Medicaid is treated differently in rural America than it is in your area, in your major metropolitan area hospitals? There's a different conversion rate. There's a different reimbursement rate. Also, in rural America, the issue is that not all service providers take either Medicaid or Medicare. So if you are a retirement community, if you are building a retirement community, if you're building upon that aging population, you have to get with your medical personnel and find out, do they take the services that the aging population requires? That is a critical step. Because if you don't take care of the aging population and you are becoming a retirement community, that's not an economic development activity. That is an activity that you will be on the decline. So come back tomorrow for our tapestry conversation about the type of person that lives in a generalized community, and the type of person that lives there, and what we mean by the tapestry of an individual.
Thanks so much for joining us. The tapestries really are quite fascinating. A little teaser, there's 67 of them across the country. So there's a lot to talk about this week to help you learn about who might live in your community.
So you won't have all 67 of them in your community, but you'll have a choice to attract anyone from those 67 tapestries. So I'm Frank Spillers.
And I'm Kim Spillers. Thanks for joining Rural Community Solutions on this wonderful Monday, January 4th. Which actually is the 10th day of Christmas.
And so if you are interested in having us assist you in designing family-friendly, youth-centered places that attract people, it can be a business, an organization, a community, a family, a church, whatever it is, it's creating that environment that attracts the person that you want. There are certain steps that you can take, and we can help that with that. So come back tomorrow, 11:30 a.m. Central Time, right here on Rural Community Solutions TV live stream. Have a great day.
Take care.